For 3 days, the dog remained a fixture on the cracked asphalt. It did not shift. It did not seek shade. A bowl of water sat untouched, the surface film gathering dust as the sun climbed and fell. Heavy trucks roared past every few minutes, their weight shuddering through the ground and rattling the loose gravel near the ditch. Each time, the air pressure spiked, whipping the dog's fur, yet it did not blink. It did not even twitch its ears. A passerby pulled over on the second day, stepping out to offer a piece of bread. The dog stared straight ahead, eyes locked onto a patch of dry, trampled earth near the roadside ditch. The stranger reached out a hand, but the dog remained a statue of fur and bone, indifferent to the movement, the noise, and the offering. Neighbors watched from their porches, whispering about travelers and abandoned pets, assuming a master would eventually return to claim the animal. They were wrong. The dog was not waiting for a car to stop. The patch of earth was unremarkable to any casual observer. It was a dry, trampled square of weeds and packed dust, situated just inches from the steep slope of the ditch. Yet, for the dog, this was the center of the universe. The soil here was different from the surrounding ground. It was flattened, pressed down with a deliberate, heavy force that had killed the grass and left the surface smooth and hard. If one looked closely, the edges of the dirt showed faint, jagged indentations, as if something had been dragged or pushed into the earth with great haste. The dog's gaze never wavered from this singular point. It did not look at the passing cars. It did not look at the trees. It stared at the dirt with a raw, predatory intensity that made the surrounding silence feel heavy. A stray beetle crawled across the trampled patch, but the dog did not snap at it. A gust of wind kicked up grit and dry leaves, swirling them around the dog's paws, but it did not flinch. The animal was locked in a trance, its entire existence narrowed down to the few inches of ground. It was as if the dog were holding the earth together by the sheer force of its focus, guarding the secret hidden beneath the surface from the world that kept rushing by. The road became a stage for a tragedy that existed only in the minds of those passing through. Drivers slowed their vehicles, peering through windshields at the creature, their faces tight with a mixture of pity and annoyance. They saw abandoned animal, a stray left behind by a careless traveler, and they projected their own stories onto its silence. Neighbors leaned over their fences, voices low, weaving a narrative of betrayal. They spoke of a family moving on, of a car door slamming shut, and of a loyal heart left to wither in the dust. Every slow roll of a tire past the ditch felt like a judgment. They watched the dog, waiting for it to howl, waiting for it to run after a passing sedan, waiting for the moment it would finally accept that its master was never coming back. They were certain of their conclusion. To them, the dog was a monument to human cruelty, a pathetic figure waiting for a ghost. They did not see the vigilance. They did not see the purpose. Their pity hung in the air like heavy smoke, thick and misguided, obscuring the hard, cold reality of the ground beneath the dog's paws. The rhythm of the road changed with the sudden screech of brakes. A heavy work truck pulled onto the shoulder, its tires crunching deep into the loose gravel. The engine sputtered once and died, leaving a sudden, ringing stillness in its wake. A man in a high-visibility work vest stepped down from the cab. He did not look at the passing traffic or the distant houses. His eyes were locked on the dog. He moved toward the ditch with a measured, cautious gait, his heavy boots pressing firmly into the dirt. Every step he took seemed to test the air, as if he expected the animal to bolt or snap at any second. He stopped 3 feet away, his shadow falling long and dark over the patch of trampled earth. The dog did not acknowledge him. It remained a fixed point in the landscape, its focus unbroken. The man held his position, his hands hovering near his sides, his chest rising and falling with slow, deliberate breaths. He watched the dog's ears, searching for a twitch, but found only a terrifying, absolute stillness. The air between them grew tight. It was guarding something that the man was only just beginning to sense. The man remained standing for a long moment, his eyes scanning the ground where the dog stared. The silence of the roadside felt heavy, pressing against his eardrums until the only sound was the distant, muffled hum of a truck passing on the highway. He took a slow breath, his gaze tracing the line of the dog's sight. He knelt down, his knees hitting the hard, dry earth with a sharp, dry pop that echoed in the stillness. He leaned forward, his face inches from the ground, ignoring the grit that clung to his palms. There, partially buried beneath a layer of trampled dust and dead leaves, he saw it. A jagged, thin scrap of blue fabric poked through the surface. He reached out, his fingers hovering just above the debris. He did not touch it yet. The sight of the color, so out of place against the dull brown of the ditch, sent a jolt of cold realization through him. He looked at the dog, then back at the blue scrap. The air seemed to thin. Something was beneath the dirt, and the dog had been watching over it for days. The man pressed his palms into the dry, packed earth and began to scrape. The soil was stubborn, baked hard by the sun. He pushed his fingers into the grit, pulling away layers of dust and dead grass. With every handful he removed, the dog shifted its posture. It did not bark. It did not snap. Instead, a low, guttural sound began to emanate from its chest. A steady, rhythmic vibration that seemed to pulse in time with the man's own heartbeat. The man ignored the dirt under his fingernails. He worked with a frantic, focused energy, clearing the debris in wide, sweeping motions. The air grew thick with the smell of dry, stale earth. But as he dug deeper, the scent changed. A faint, damp musk rose from the hole, cold and heavy. He struck something solid. His hand reached back to clear the loose soil. It was firm, unyielding, and buried deep. The dog leaned forward, its nose hovering just inches from the man's working hands. The vibration in its throat grew louder, a constant, warning hum. The man's pulse hammered as he realized the ground was hiding more than just fabric. The man pushed the last of the loose dirt aside. His breath hitched, caught in his throat like a jagged stone. Beneath the final layer of grit, a pale, unmoving shape emerged. It was a hand. The fingers were slightly curled, half buried in the dark, cool earth. He pulled his own hands back as if burned, his palms hovering in the air. The silence of the roadside felt absolute, stripped of all sound except for the ragged intake of his own breath. He stared at the skin, devoid of color. This was no longer a mystery to be solved. It was a tragedy laid bare in the ditch. He reached out again, his fingers trembling, and brushed a final layer of soil from the knuckles. The skin was cold. The reality of the situation settled over him, heavy and suffocating. The dog remained perfectly still, its gaze locked on the exposed limb, its rhythmic vibration fading into a hollow, quiet stillness. The man sat back on his heels, the weight of the discovery pressing into his chest. He looked up at the highway, then back at the hand. The man stayed motionless, his knees sinking deeper into the gravel. He watched the dog. The animal had stopped its low, rhythmic vibration, its body language shifting from a guard to something softer, almost fragile. Slowly, the dog leaned forward. It moved with a deliberate, agonizing precision, lowering its head toward the pale, exposed hand. The man held his breath, his own pulse thudding against his ribs. The dog pressed its wet nose against the cold, unmoving skin of the knuckles. It held the contact, a silent, lingering touch that defied the stillness of the grave. There was no frantic movement, no attempt to wake the person beneath the surface. It was a final, gentle acknowledgement. The dog closed its eyes for a second, its breath hitching against the stillness of the hand. The man saw the way the dog's ears flattened, a quiet surrender to the reality of the loss. It was not waiting for a command. It was not expecting a miracle. It was simply staying close to the only thing it had left in the world. The dog pulled back just an inch, then rested its chin near the wrist, keeping its vigil unbroken. The man stood up slowly, his joints stiff from the long, frozen vigil on the gravel. He looked at the dog, then back at the small, disturbed patch of earth that had become a final resting place. The truth settled into the silence of the roadside. The animal had not been waiting for a car to return, nor for a master who had wandered off into the woods. It had been guarding a grave. For 3 days, through the roar of passing trucks and the biting heat of the sun, it had held its post. The man reached out a hand, intending to lead the creature away from the dust, but the dog did not even glance at him. It shifted its weight, settling its paws firmly over the soil, its eyes fixed on the ground with an unwavering, terrifying focus. It was a sentinel that refused to be relieved. The man stepped back, his presence suddenly feeling intrusive, a disruption to a bond that death had failed to sever. He walked toward his truck, his boots crunching rhythmically on the road, but he stopped at the door to look back one last time. The dog remained, a silhouette against the fading light, anchored to the earth. The man climbed into his cab, started the engine, and pulled away, leaving the dog alone in the growing shadows, still keeping its silent, eternal vigil.